The kingdom of Velaris was vast. Its borders stretched across stars, and its fleets sailed through cosmic rivers of light. Inside its many worlds, creatures of different shapes, sizes, and minds lived under one rule. Some were strong, some were clever. But for the humans, the newest species to arrive, life was a test they were not expected to pass. Princess Alara of Earth had grown in this kingdom like a small candle in a windstorm. She had pale skin, curious brown eyes, and hair that the Valerians often said seemed too simple for royalty. Unlike the other heirs, she had no alien powers. No wings, no telepathy, no strange abilities that made her shine in the royal court. People whispered she was just a human, fragile and unremarkable, and yet she carried a spark that no one in Velaris could see at first. Alara spent her mornings in quiet study. While other nobles argued over court politics or flaunted their strength, she wandered through corridors and libraries. She read about the kingdom's history, its laws, and the forgotten corners of its worlds. She studied the outer systems, the small planets that were overlooked, ignored, and underfunded. On these worlds, factories worked inefficiently, fleets had missing supplies, and messages between planets sometimes took months instead of days. Everyone in the capital considered these failures inevitable. Everyone, that is, except Alara. One morning, while walking in the palace gardens, she overheard two advisors talking. "The human child will never lead," one whispered. "She asks too many questions. She lacks discipline. She may live in the palace," the other said, "but the people will never follow her. A human cannot be a true leader here." Alara paused behind a column. She did not speak, but inside something stirred. It was not anger, it was curiosity. If humans were underestimated, then maybe, just maybe, that was her advantage. The palace itself was a marvel. Towers rose like crystal spires, and bridges of light connected one wing to another. But the beauty of the structure hid in efficiency. In the royal kitchens, orders sometimes went missing. In the fleet control rooms, reports were delayed. Every system relied on habit, not on thought. Alara began to notice these patterns. She asked small questions. Why is this delivery late? Why does this planet lack enough food? Couldn't this report be sent faster? At first, no one answered her. Then, slowly, people began to listen. Her first project was simple. She reorganized the delivery schedules for the palace kitchens. Instead of demanding more food from farmers, she asked them what was possible and adjusted the timing. Within days, waste decreased, and meals were ready on time. The palace cooks whispered among themselves. "This is human thinking," one said. "It works." Next, she turned her attention to communication. Reports from outer systems often took weeks. By the time the council read them, conditions had changed. Alara suggested a network using light-speed signals and automated translators. The council laughed. "This is unnecessary," they said. "Our methods have worked for centuries." But Alara quietly instructed engineers to build a small prototype. Within a month, messages between distant worlds arrived in hours, not weeks. Despite these successes, doubts followed her like shadows. In the main hall, nobles murmured, "The human princess meddles in matters she does not understand. She may solve small problems, but real leadership is more than clever tricks." Alara listened, but did not reply. She knew leadership was not about speeches or titles. It was about understanding the system, seeing what others ignored, and finding solutions. She began to meet with ordinary citizens, engineers, and traders. She listened to their stories. She learned about the shortages on mining planets, the difficulties of farming in low-gravity fields, and the struggles of teachers on faraway moons. Every story was a clue, every problem a chance to act. Her favorite companion was Tivan, a small Valerian engineer who had the gift of making machines speak. He was old, quiet, and patient. One evening, they walked along the balcony overlooking the capital city. "Why do you care about these small problems?" Tivan asked. "The council will never notice," Alara smiled. "Because small problems grow into big problems if we ignore them," she said. "If the kingdom falls, it will not be from a war, it will be from neglect." Tivan nodded. "Perhaps humans are clever in ways we cannot understand," he said softly. One day, an unusual event occurred. A cargo fleet returning from the mining planet Scifi encountered a delay. Supplies were low and communication had failed. The council panicked. Messages crossed back and forth. Orders were shouted and ignored. Everyone waited for a decision. Alara stepped forward. "Let me see the routes and the data," she said. The council stared. "The human child cannot fix this," one muttered. But Alara spent hours studying the fleet's records. She traced the cause of the delay, a series of misaligned schedules, small technical failures, and miscommunication between planets. She reorganized the routes, sent instructions to the fleet, and even taught the crew a few tricks to speed repairs. By the next day, the fleet was back on schedule. Supplies arrived and a crisis was avoided. The Council was forced to acknowledge her success, though reluctantly. Whispers changed from doubt to cautious respect. "Perhaps humans are not useless," one advisor admitted. "Perhaps they are clever." Alara did not celebrate. She knew that cleverness alone would not be enough. The kingdom faced deeper problems, problems hidden beneath centuries of habit and assumption. She began to plan. Late at night in the palace library, Alara discovered an old record. It described the kingdom's foundation, how Velaris had expanded, and the fragile balance that kept the empire together. One line caught her eye. "The strength of Velaris depends on loyalty, not logic. Ignore the people at your peril." Her heart raced. The council had relied on loyalty, tradition, and fear. But loyalty could be fragile. If one species or one world lost faith, the empire could wobble like a spinning wheel. Alara realized something important. She did not have to destroy the empire to change it. She only had to show that it could be better. She spent weeks planning quietly. She mapped connections between planets, identified systems that could be improved, and wrote proposals for change. She did not announce her plans to the council. Instead, she acted quietly, letting results speak. The outer systems began to notice. Trade routes became faster, harvests increased, communication improved, messages came back to the capital. The human princess's methods work. At first, the council tried to suppress this news. They sent officials to slow progress, but the people resisted. Farmers, engineers, and traders were willing to follow a system that worked. Slowly, the kingdom began to change, not because of orders, but because of results. Alara's final discovery in this part of her journey came when she visited the planet Loris, known for its dense fogs and hidden valleys. Here, mining colonies had failed for decades. Supplies were scarce, and life was harsh. Alara spoke to the miners, listened to their problems, and worked with them to improve machinery and workflow. By the time she left, the colony was thriving for the first time in generations. When news reached the capital, the council panicked. "The human princess is gaining influence outside our control," they whispered. But Alara was not seeking power. She sought understanding and solutions. And yet she could feel something stirring, a quiet rebellion of thought. She returned to her quarters and looked at the stars. The kingdom was vast, full of doubt, fear, and hidden challenges. But she was human, and humans, she thought, could do what others would not even try, and so the quiet heir began her work. Not with armies, not with speeches, but with curiosity, determination, and the stubborn belief that one human could make a difference. The stars waited. The kingdom whispered doubts. And the human princess, unseen but unstoppable, ignited a spark that would one day light a fire across worlds. Princess Alara had changed a few small things quietly, but the effects began to ripple far beyond the palace walls. What had started as simple improvements, better communication, more organized deliveries, and faster trade, was slowly awakening the people. Traders whispered about how the human princess's ideas worked. Miners told engineers that new systems had made their work easier. Farmers spoke in wonder of their more productive harvests. Alara knew the whispers would reach the council eventually. She was not afraid. Humans had always adapted to situations others called impossible. She understood that real influence came not from titles but from trust. And trust, she thought, grew from results. The first time she saw the impact of her work outside the palace, she traveled to the planet Viridian. It was known for its massive forests and its fragile ecosystem. The Valerian Council had long neglected it because of its simple problems. Villages suffered from flooding and soil erosion. Farmers could not grow enough food, and the local economy struggled. Alara arrived with Tivan, her old engineer friend, and a small team of volunteers. She spoke to farmers, fishermen, and builders. She asked questions, listened, and observed. No one tried to impress her with reports or charts. She wanted truth. The people spoke honestly. They spoke about what worked, what failed, and what they feared. Within days, she proposed a plan. It was not grand or expensive. She suggested irrigation channels that could control floods, crop rotation schedules that would improve soil health, and simple storage systems to keep food fresh longer. She taught the villagers how to work together, share information, and plan ahead. The results were immediate. Fields flourished. Storage buildings were organized. Water no longer washed away young crops. Word of success spread quickly. Traders carried the news to neighboring planets. Engineers sent reports to the capital, and slowly the council began to notice. In the palace, whispers of Alara's work grew louder. "The human princess is meddling in too many systems," said one council member. "Soon she may replace our authority," another replied. "We cannot stop her. The people like what she does. She does not command, she improves, and they follow results, not orders." Alara's approach was not to fight the council. She knew that direct confrontation would fail. Instead, she acted quietly, focusing on improvement, not rebellion. Her methods were practical, observable, and undeniable. Then came the first real test. A distant mining colony on Scifi was in crisis. An unusual storm damaged mining equipment, and the colony's communication relay went offline. Supplies were low. The council debated sending a fleet, but the storms would delay it for weeks. Panic spread in the capital. Alara stepped forward. "Let me help," she said calmly. The council hesitated. Some whispered doubts, some laughed. But she had studied Scifi's systems and knew a solution. She called engineers, fleet commanders, and local administrators. Using remote signals, she directed repairs and rerouted supplies. She coordinated workers across multiple planets and taught the colony how to repair equipment with available resources. She even sent teams of volunteers to train miners in safer, faster methods. Within days, the colony stabilized. Supplies arrived, repairs were made, and production resumed. Reports flooded the capital. Citizens across Velaris noticed the change. "The human princess saved the colony," one trader said. "She did not wait for orders, she acted." The council was uneasy. Their authority had been challenged, not by armies or threats, but by solutions and efficiency. Alara realized something important. Humans did not need power to change the world. They needed understanding, creativity, and courage to act. She began building networks of citizens, engineers, and traders. These networks shared ideas, solved problems, and improved systems across planets. Other species started noticing. Many were impressed. Some were jealous. Some were afraid. The council tried to slow her work by sending officials to enforce older methods. But the people resisted. They had seen results. They had seen life improve. And quietly, a new form of loyalty was forming, not loyalty to the crown, but loyalty to what worked. One evening, Alara walked with Tivan on the palace balcony. The twin moons reflected on the city below. "They are trying to stop progress," Tivan said. "But people trust your methods." Alara nodded. "Progress cannot be stopped if it makes life better. I do not need armies. I need ideas and people willing to follow them." Tivan smiled. "Humans always surprise us." The real challenge came when an interstellar trade route was threatened by a sudden political conflict. Two planets refused to share resources, and supplies to smaller colonies were at risk. The council argued over sanctions, treaties, and fleets. Time passed. Nothing changed. Alara saw a different solution. She called diplomats, engineers, and local leaders. She proposed a cooperative plan, shared responsibilities, transparent data, and incentives for collaboration rather than punishment. Many laughed at first. "This will never work," one Valerian minister said. "Humans are too naive." But Alara insisted. She presented evidence from previous projects: successful irrigation on Veridian, Scifi's repaired mines, and trade improvements from her early communications project. She showed that cooperation produced results faster than threats. Slowly, the planets agreed. Within weeks, trade resumed, colonies received supplies, and tensions eased. The council had to admit that Alara's methods worked. They could no longer ignore her influence. Even as her success grew, Alara faced challenges she had not anticipated. Some council members tried to manipulate the people, spreading rumors that humans were selfish or dangerous. Some nobles plotted to block her projects. Yet she found unexpected allies among citizens, engineers, and even a few council members who valued results over tradition. Alara learned that leadership was not just about solving problems. It was about trust, communication, and showing people that progress could be shared. She encouraged collaboration between different species. Engineers taught farmers, farmers advised traders. Traders helped engineers. Ideas flowed freely, and systems improved faster than anyone expected. The kingdom began to change, not because of force, but because people saw improvement and chose it themselves. One night, Alara visited a hidden research facility on the outskirts of the capital. Here, she met scholars and inventors working in secret. Their projects had been ignored for decades. Machines that could purify water on desert planets, engines that could travel faster with less energy, and communication devices that could link dozens of planets in real time. Alara encouraged them. She taught them how to organize their work, share results, and collaborate. Within months, their inventions were helping real colonies. Humans, she realized, were not just clever, they inspired collaboration across species. The council began to worry. "The human princess is gaining influence too quickly," one whispered. "She does not ask for power, but people follow her anyway. If this continues, she could change the entire kingdom." Alara did not seek power, she sought change. And yet she knew that the council's doubt could turn into opposition. Her first major confrontation came when a group of nobles demanded that she stop her projects and publicly renounce her methods. They argued that only the council had the right to manage the kingdom. Alara calmly refused. "I do not oppose the council," she said. "I work for the people and for progress. If we continue to ignore problems, the kingdom will fail. I will not stand by while that happens." The council was stunned. The palace fell silent. No one expected a human princess to speak with such confidence. For the first time, whispers turned into quiet discussion. Some nobles began to reconsider. Some council members started to ask for advice. And beyond the walls of the capital, people began to hope. Alara had lit a fire. It was small, subtle, and unstoppable. It was not a rebellion with weapons or armies. It was a rebellion of ideas, of efficiency, and of courage. By the end of Part 2, the kingdom of Velaris had begun to feel different. Systems worked better, communication was faster, and citizens across planets started to notice a new form of leadership, one that listened, adapted, and acted. Alara returned to her quarters, looking at the stars. The empire was vast and filled with doubt. The council still resisted. Some species were wary, and yet she felt hope. Humans could act where others hesitated. Humans could inspire change without force. She whispered to herself, "This is only the beginning." The fire beneath the throne was now visible. The human princess had moved beyond quiet improvements. Soon, the spark would become a flame, and the kingdom would never be the same. The kingdom of Velaris was changing. Slowly, quietly, and without anyone expecting it, the seeds Princess Alara had planted had begun to grow. Systems across the empire were improving. Traders were moving goods faster. Colonies were thriving. Engineers shared knowledge across planets. Citizens whispered her name not with mockery but with respect. Yet change always brought fear. The council, once amused by the human princess, was now cautious. Some members whispered warnings, while others tried to block her work. They feared that if people saw results without royal command, the old hierarchy would crumble. They did not yet understand what Alara already knew. Humans did not need power to ignite change. They only needed action. It began with a small planet, Vera, on the outskirts of the empire. Vera had been forgotten for decades, its economy failing, its citizens struggling. When Alara received reports, she did not send royal orders. Instead, she went herself. She spoke to farmers, miners, and teachers. She listened more than she spoke. "What do you need most?" she asked one farmer. "Water," he said simply, "and someone who listens." Alara smiled. She organized irrigation projects, taught simple water collection methods, and coordinated volunteers from nearby colonies. She did not demand obedience. She asked for collaboration. Within months, Vera was thriving. Crops grew better than ever. Children went to school regularly. Villages communicated with nearby colonies for trade. When news reached the capital, the council was furious. "A human princess is running planets without permission," one shouted. Alara replied calmly, "I do not run planets. I help them run themselves. That is how kingdoms survive, by improving the lives of the people." The council could not argue with results. Word spread quickly. Other neglected planets began sending messages. "Can she help us too?" Citizens wanted progress. They wanted solutions, not whispers. The people were forming a silent network, connecting with Alara's ideas. What started as small improvements in the capital and a few outer colonies had now become a chain of influence that stretched across the empire. The council tried to respond with authority. Officials were sent to enforce old rules. Some nobles wrote letters condemning her methods as human foolishness. Yet, wherever the officials went, the people resisted. They had seen what worked. They trusted results more than titles. Alara noticed a pattern. Humans did not need armies or threats. They only needed clarity, understanding, and action. She began to design a system for the entire kingdom, a network where information, ideas, and solutions could flow freely. It was a human system built on collaboration. Her next challenge came in the form of a planetary blockade. Two neighboring worlds, in disagreement over trade, refused to share resources. Colonies on distant planets were at risk of running out of supplies. The council debated fleets and sanctions. Weeks passed with no solution. Alara stepped forward. "We do not need fleets or threats," she said. "We need cooperation." Many laughed. "Cooperation will not work between stubborn planets," said a Valerian noble. "Humans are too naive." But Alara had proof. She presented the successes of Vera, Zephyr, and Viridian. She showed that when people shared information and collaborated, solutions came faster than force. She called diplomats, engineers, and local leaders. Together, they designed a plan, trade agreements based on shared goals, automated reporting for supplies, and incentives for collaboration. Alara coordinated the system personally, making sure communication was clear and every party was heard. In weeks, the blockade ended. Supplies reached colonies, tensions eased. The council could only watch in amazement. Alara's influence spread even further when she visited the capital's neglected districts. Factories were outdated, schools overcrowded, and hospitals inefficient. Instead of commanding, she asked questions. She listened. She encouraged engineers to work with teachers and volunteers to help with hospitals. Within months, the districts flourished. Factories ran efficiently. Students learned better. Hospitals treated patients faster. People whispered, "The human princess understands us." Alara did not stop there. She organized councils where representatives from all planets could meet, share ideas, and solve problems. No one species was more important than the other. Everyone had a voice. Decisions were made based on results, not rank. The empire was slowly transforming into a network of shared intelligence, with humans inspiring cooperation at every level. The council grew desperate. They summoned Alara and demanded that she stop her work and obey the traditional hierarchy. Alara stood calmly before them. "I do not oppose you," she said. "I oppose failure. The kingdom will not thrive if we ignore problems. The people want solutions. I give them solutions." "You may call it defiance, but I call it responsibility." The council could not argue with her logic. Citizens, traders, and engineers were watching closely. If the council acted against her, they would risk public outrage. Alara smiled quietly. She had not acted with force, but the result was clear. The kingdom was following her methods, whether the council liked it or not. Then came the ultimate test, a natural disaster on the planet Loris. A massive storm threatened entire cities. Supplies were limited and evacuation systems were outdated. The council debated fleets, emergency orders, and complicated protocols. Time was short. Alara acted immediately. She organized volunteers, engineers, and local leaders. She created evacuation routes, temporary shelters, and supply networks. She coordinated communication across planets so messages reached the right people in minutes. The storm hit, but thanks to her planning, casualties were minimal. Supplies reached cities on time. Refugees were cared for. When the storm passed, citizens celebrated her efforts. The council was stunned. "A human princess has saved a planet," one muttered. "Without armies, without authority, she saved a world." Alara only smiled. She had done what humans did best: act where others hesitated, solve problems where others saw chaos, and inspire others to follow solutions instead of fear. The empire began to recognize a new truth. Leadership did not need to be based on titles, tradition, or power. Leadership could be based on ideas, action, and trust. Citizens were more loyal to results than to rank. Cooperation became the new law of the land. Alara's influence continued to grow. Engineers built faster ships. Farmers shared knowledge. Teachers taught citizens to solve problems. Colonies that had once struggled now thrived. The kingdom was changing, not through conquest, but through innovation. Finally, Alara addressed the council publicly. She did not demand power. She did not threaten. She spoke with clarity. "The kingdom whispers doubts about humans," she said. But humans do not need to prove strength with weapons or magic. We prove strength with action, understanding, and collaboration. We do not seek to dominate. We seek to improve. This kingdom can thrive if we work together across species, across planets. I ask you to join me not because you must, but because it works. Silence filled the hall. Then one by one, council members nodded. Citizens cheered, engineers smiled, traders clapped. The Empire understood that humans had not arrived to take power. They had arrived to show what leadership could be. The last days of Part 3 focused on rebuilding the Empire into a network of shared knowledge and collaboration. Alara traveled from planet to planet, helping, listening, teaching, and inspiring. She did not need armies, weapons, or threats. She had something stronger, ideas that worked and humans willing to act. The council no longer whispered doubts. The citizens no longer feared stagnation, and the kingdom, once rigid and slow, became dynamic, resilient, and united. Alara looked up at the stars one night, thinking of the future. She knew there would always be challenges. There would always be doubt. But she also knew that humans could inspire change where others hesitated. Humans could act, think, and solve. Humans could ignite a fire that no one could extinguish. And so, the kingdom that once doubted her now followed her ideas. Not because of force, but because humans had shown the impossible, that a single human princess could ignite a rebellion, not of weapons, but of hope, intelligence, and cooperation. The fire was no longer beneath the throne. It burned across every planet, every city, and every heart. And humanity, once underestimated, had proven that it could shine across the stars.